Hello fellow miniature painters, I'm Kuro Cleanbrush, and today I would like to teach you how to paint stripes on your miniatures and their bases. Alright, so let's get started. I have with me here Cordelia from the Cordelia and Scarface Mercenary combo from Corvus Belli. At least I believe that's how you pronounce it. From the Infinity Miniatures game there. And I've made a little industrial type base for her. That base I actually took some window screen and made some diamond plating. Otherwise it's just a couple of strips of plastic card. And what we want to do, although you can demonstrate striping on anything, such as pirate pants or just the nice warning stripes on bolters or chain swords or something like that, for purposes of demonstration, we're going to go ahead and take this yellow warning strip and put some black striping on it. Now, in the interest of not making you watch me base coat this for a long time, I took my Reaper MSP Bones Lantern Yellow, and you can see that's a little bit of an orange yellow, and base coated the entire strip. After that, we're going to take Reaper's Magnificent Blue liner, and we're going to take this very dark blue, almost black color, and do the lining with it. I really like to use, or draw the lines. I really like to use Reaper's liner paints in order to sketch out any type of freehand or patterning that I'm doing, just because it has a little bit of flow improver in it already, so it just flows so smoothly and comes off your brush in nice thin lines. So I've already got my paints on my palette. I'm going to go ahead and get some paint on my brush, and as always, when you're loading up your brush, you never want to go beyond maybe a third to a half of the bristles. And at that point you have some extra paint on your brush. In order to make this technique really succeed, you need your paint and your paintbrush to be in good shape. So you want to take that excess paint on the tip and wipe it off on either a paper towel or maybe your thumb or something, such that you remove the bulk of the paint from the outside of the paintbrush and you can just see the glisten of the color on the inside of the bristles. Now, unfortunately, I've waited a long time in order to demonstrate this technique to you, so I'm going to go ahead and clean off my paintbrush here with a quick swipe through the water, take a paper towel and reform the tip, and this time I'm going to put it back in the paint and get ready to go for real. Now, a quick note before I begin here, the most important things when you're trying to do any fine detail work are to make sure that you're seated and that you're bracing yourself in such a way that your hands aren't shaking because you're having to hold them out in front of you. I like to put my elbows locked up against the sides of my body, my wrists on the tabletop, and my hands palmed together, bracing against the cup, such that I have as many points of contact with what I'm trying to paint as I possibly can. So, with that in mind, let's load up the paintbrush. So I've got it about a third of the way full. I've removed the excess paint, and then I'm just going to arbitrarily pick the first angle. Don't worry too much about being perfect. Just get some paint in the general vicinity. Then go approximately whatever distance you decide your stripes need to be away and make another one. And err on the side of making your stripes too thin rather than too thick, because you can always go back through and add thickness to your stripes, but you can't as easily go back through and thin them down. But you can see that already we're starting to make some nice stripes here. So when I run out of paint, I generally, when I'm doing this fine detail work, wash all the remaining paint off of my brush, load it up freshly again, and get back to work. That constant unload your brush, reload your brush technique will make sure that you're always working with paint that is the optimal consistency for what you're doing, and that the paint is always the same consistency from time to time. That consistent consistency is one of the things that will help you out the most, right? And I'm actually going to go back through and I'm going to add a little, we need a half stripe there or something. So I made that too close together, so we'll go show you how to fix it. But many people are intimidated by doing things such as striping or checker patterns right off the bat because they think, oh, I have to make it perfect. Well, this is not perfect. I have varying thicknesses of my lines. They're a hair see-through. They're not exactly evenly spaced. But when looked at as a whole, you don't really notice it. So be brave. Give this technique a try, and don't get too intimidated by the process that you don't even give it a try to begin with. So, all right. Now these type of angles are hard to reach, so I'm going to have to try to get my paintbrush in. This stripe probably will not be as good as the other stripes, just by dint of it being harder to reach. But by dint of it being harder to reach, that also means it will be ever so slightly harder to see, so I have a little bit of a safety net. Now you can't see what I'm doing, so I gotta turn it to the side. Alright. This is where making your lines thinner than they need to be to begin with will also pay dividends, because if the lines don't have the same angles relative to each other, you can often fatten them up and do some course correction while you're doing that. So let's go ahead. I need to get a little bit more angle out of this. So there we go. Now we're back away from the legs enough that we can reach relatively easily. So we keep the striping coming. All right. Not perfect, right? We can see that the stripes on the left are thinner than the stripes on the right. So we're going to go back through and we're going to beef up all the stripes with a second layer. This second layer will help us make sure that the stripes are a little bit more uniform and a little bit more opaque, just in case the first pass over them wasn't fully opaque. All right, we're getting there. Getting there. All right. My stripes are a little close together between her feet, so we'll work on those here in a second. I'm also just trying to get the angle right so that it matches the others, at least at some portion of the line. Remember, too, that if this was an actual industrial base, it would most likely be painted by people with spray paint cans or paintbrushes in real life, and it's unlikely that they would be able to make the warning stripes perfectly straight to begin with. So no need to beat yourself up if your stripes aren't perfectly straight, if in real life the warning stripes that people were painting probably wouldn't be perfectly straight. So there we go. Alright. Moving in the right direction. But we still got the problem with the ones between her feet. They don't look right. They're too fat, and they've blurred the line between our nice evenness. I'm gonna quickly touch back up this corner stripe, which doesn't have enough paint on it yet. And then we can go back through with our yellow. So go back and pick your yellow that you base coated everything with, or red, or whatever color you started with, and just gently erase the offending edges. Right? Starting to look better already. Go back through here. This one has inconsistent thickness top to bottom, so we'll try to fix that. Once again, every time I feel like I run out of paint on my brush, I'm taking the paintbrush away completely and getting fresh paint on it. Let's see if you can still see that. There we go. All right, getting there. Still have to fix the space between these two lines. The ability to just go and cover up mistakes with more paint is one of the things that makes miniature painting so very forgiving and really is infinitely helpful. So don't be afraid to lean on the, well, I can always put on a new coat of paint tactic as much as you need to. There we go. Yellow doesn't cover very well, so it might require a couple coats, or a couple, 2, 3 coats over top of things in order to fix them up. All right. Essentially there. Not absolutely perfect. Once again, the ones between her feet, we're going to need to spend a couple more seconds on, but we're mostly there. And if this is all you want to do with your stripes, bingo. Good. They can totally sell as stripes like this. You don't have to go any further. But in one more second, we're going to try to take the stripes to the next level by adding a little bit of shading and highlighting to those stripes. So first, though, we want to make sure we've got a nice, perfect little base to work with. I like that. And hey, if the stripes are never perfectly aligned, we can rub some dirt on them, right? That ought to make it look even more industrial. Last attempt to skinny up this stripe and align it properly. Okay, there we go. Another thing that we could do to help make the stripes more uniform is you'll notice that they're thinner at the top where I put the tip of my brush and thicker at the bottom where I pulled it away. I could flip everything around and paint a second layer over all the stripes with my paintbrush at this angle, and then that should fix the problem that way too. But I think it sells well enough as is. So now we want to go through and we want to add a little bit more depth, a little shading and highlighting to this. So very simply, I'm just going to grab some brighter yellow and I'm going to paint it into the stripes, favoring one side. And when I paint the miniature, I'm probably going to favor her right side with the light. So let's go ahead and plop in a little bit of this brighter yellow. Now this yellow I'm using, I should probably show you, is pale saffron, once again a Reaper color. You can see it has a lot less orange and is a lot brighter yellow in general. And that's from their Reaper's MSP HD line. So, okay. Carrying on. So I'm going to favor the right side of each stripe with this. Once again, it's yellow, so it's not going to cover too well. With this, since I don't need to be as precise, I'm not going to be as much of a stickler about cleaning my paintbrush off between each loading. There we go. It just adds some nice color gradient, which helps to give some depth to everything. After I'm done with all this off camera, I'm going to go ahead and try to put some dirt and some rust on this to make it try to match the whole rest of the base. But for the moment, let's just make it look like nice, clean striping. There we go. I want to make sure I don't turn it too much here for you, and try to work a little bit in the center of the workspace. And please forgive me if I'm mumbling here a little bit. I have a tendency to hold my breath a little bit while I'm trying to do really fine detail work, or at least hold a half breath. That can help you at times. Just obviously don't hold your breath too long. Never want to. It doesn't help you if you pass out while you're painting. Almost there. All right. There we go. I'm just going to add a second layer real quick. Brighten it up even more. There we go. The second layer is really starting to make it pop a little bit more. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if we have the color resolution in the camera necessary for you to see how much depth this is adding to everything. Can we still see? Yay. Alright, more paint necessary. And then, as you might imagine, as soon as we finish doing this with the yellow, we'll go back through and we'll add some very dark blue-gray into the black, and that'll kind of make the black have a little bit of depth to it. Here we go. Looking very industrial. So I'm now going to take Reaper's Midnight Blue, which is a very, very dark blue-gray, and then the blue liner is obviously the base for that. And I'm going to try to pop all the stripes. Once again, as much as possible, favoring the way I'm holding the miniature now, the upper right side of the stripes. But the stripes are thin enough I may not be able to favor things too much. And with each new layer, you can use it a little bit to kind of heal the sins of the previous layers if things aren't fully flat or what have you. There we go. Oh, sorry, not flat, straight. That's what I meant. There we go. Almost there. Make that one just a little bit thicker, and this one just a little bit more angled. Now, if during any of that time you feel like you messed up, load a paintbrush with one of the intermediary colors, and just clean up the edge of things a little bit. There we go. Now you've got a perfectly good stripe base. Obviously, the more difficult it is to reach something, the more difficult it is to get it perfectly straight, but that should sell pretty reasonably as nice continuous stripe base. Now real quick, just as a bonus, for those who are interested, I don't like how smooth this concrete is. I work in an industrial facility. I'm a steel maker. And there's a lot of cracks that run through concrete just because concrete has a really rough job to hold up the flooring of the world. So we're going to go ahead and put a couple of quick cracks in the concrete in order to tie the world together. So taking our wonderful blue liner again. This time we're going to draw a very thin branching crack that goes all the way to the edge of the liner there. Alright, not bad. But cracks like this tend to generally have arms, so we're going to want to give it another arm or two. There we go. It's getting there. But it doesn't quite sell yet because we don't appear to have any light hitting it. Nothing is going on with the edges of this crack to sell it. So now that we have the crack in place, go ahead and grab a very light, potentially almost white color. In my case, I'm going to use Reaper's Ghost White because I have kind of a bluish, it has a kind of a bluish tint to it, and I've got a little bit of a bluish highlight going on to the miniature, or I at least plan to have that once there's more paint on her. And take that almost white color, get it nice and thin. You want it to still be opaque enough that it doesn't take you 10 passes to cover with stuff, but have it about the same consistency as the liner paint if you can get it. So in my case, I put down a drop and then I put in 2 little drops of water. One drop. Here's 2 drops. I didn't put the paint out at the start of the video for this white because generally the whites and the off-whites, even on my wet palette, tend to start to thicken up after a little bit of time. So I like to only put them onto my palette right before I'm about to use them. Okay. Once again, get them on your paintbrush all perfect, wiping off the excess. And now, take your paintbrush and very carefully drag it along one side of the scratch. It can cover up 1/2 of things a little bit. Might need a couple of quick layers. There we go. Starting to come alive a little bit. And then do it to all of the branches. Alright, making sure you do the same side of the crack. So in this case, we're doing the left side of the crack with all the branches. There we go. Starting to get there. And now, let's get this third and final branch of the crack. This is another one of those relatively safe and forgiving techniques because it's a crack. No one cares if it's even or not. In fact, they expect it not to be. So play around with it a little bit, give it a few tries, and soon you will have mastered this technique. So there you go. There's a little bit into an industrial style base. I might go through and pop the stripes just a little bit more, add just a little bit more depth to them in the highlight colors. But other than that, hopefully you see how the technique is done and feel emboldened to give it a try in your own painting. Thank you very much for watching, and happy painting.